So in this sequence of videos, we're going to go over a number of ideas that we've actually been over already in some of our other videos, but with a slightly different cut, a slightly different set of perspectives. And what we're going to take is 5 of the typical habitual artifacts or objects that we use in education and talk about the way in which these things change or can change in e-learning environments. So we call this, these digital affordances, if you like, about what these network digital communication environments might do for learning. Now, as a kind of an introductory thing, the digital learning can reproduce everything that we historically used to do. We can have e-textbooks and e-tests and e-this and e-that, e-everything traditional, e-lectures, and we can reproduce the traditional artifacts of learning. And what do we mean by traditional? Well, essentially, objects that were invented as part of the architecture of modern education, from early modern times through to the introduction of mass institutionalized schooling. So we can reproduce all those things, but the question we're trying to ask is how might we create different kinds of artifacts for use in these kinds of environments. So we're going to take 5 artifacts. The first one is the nature of student work, if you like, which is the means of production of meaning, the way in which students represent what they know. The second one's going to be, if you like, the artifact of the classroom itself, the artifact of the desks and the teacher and the way in which the teacher talks to students. And we're going to talk about discourse as a kind of communicative artifact. We're going to go on and we're going to talk about the kinds of social relationships that are established in these places, again, as kind of institutional artifacts. And we're going to talk about the text of the classroom. Traditionally, it was a textbook. What might we have now? And finally, we're going to talk about the artifacts of assessment. So our argument is, with each of these kinds of traditional objects, architectures, discourses, how these things might be changing in e-learning environments. Now, along the way, we'll be giving examples of the ways in which things might change from a research and development project that Mary and I have been involved in since 2009. In fact, we built versions of this before, from 2000 onwards, but this particular environment called Common Ground Scholar, we started building in 2009. So we're going to move between kind of a conceptual analysis of what's possible and our research and development practice, where we've tried to develop an environment which illustrates this stuff. And in a sense, we've learned a lot of stuff from that building. We live and breathe in this environment for a lot of every day. We get feedback from students. We get a sense of what works and what doesn't. So in a sense, what you're about to see in the examples that we give is something that's evolved from our R&D practice. And of course, what we need to do always when we go through this work is we need to acknowledge the sources of our support. Since Mary and I have come to the US, we've been very lucky to get a number of grants from the Institute of Educational Sciences in the US Department of Education, from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the National Science Foundation. And each of these grants has built a component of what it is that we're about to show you. The first of these objects, artifacts, technologies, whatever you want to call it, is about the means of production of meaning. So let's talk for a moment about what happened traditionally in classrooms. So little children come to school and they do these drawings of the world, but really what the focus is on writing books and alphabetical literacy. So there are the 3 R's, the 3 classical basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic, the 3 R's. What it's about essentially learning to read and to write, to read textbooks, to write in your workbook, and perhaps to do math as well, which is in fact another form of writing, if you want to think of it in those, in terms of the communications medium, in terms of the artifact. So this is what we do in schools, and these are essentially our tools: pen and paper, the printed word. Now what I want to jump to is an example of something in Scholar. And there are actually several images that we have here which illustrate it. So what we have here is what we call as a multimodal editor, and these happen to be engineering students here at the University of Illinois who are doing a project on the drag on a kickball. So it's an engineering project. And to do that, it's not just a matter of the lecturer giving them a lecture and then reading their textbook and then doing a test where they get the right answer to a problem that's been given to them. What they're doing is they're doing a representation of their knowledge. And what that involves, it involves mathematical formulae, it involves links to things, it involves a video demonstrating what they did, and it involves an Excel spreadsheet where they actually put in the tools that they created to do their calculations based on the formulae. So this is what we call a multimodal knowledge representation. And what's interesting is that in a traditional kind of setup where you do the test at the end of the semester and you get the problem right or wrong, which is a kind of procedural approach to things where it's the answers that matter, that what we're doing here is we're getting the students to expose their thinking. And in fact, this is an elaborate form of writing. It's not the alphabetical literacy that you saw in the previous slide. What it is, it's multimodal writing where you need the words to explain the images, to explain the diagrams, to explain the data set, to explain the math. And it's a way of exposing thinking and exposing the intricacy of that thinking along the way. So this is, as I say, an example of a new kind of textual object, if you like, which comes in these e-learning environments. Now, of course, if you know our multiliteracies theory, this is the multimodality aspect of multiliteracies, which Mary and I have written about in these two books.
What we're trying to say with this first point is that the way in which we represent knowledge requires us to think about the way in which we'll make meaning in the world outside of school as well. A lot of classes now are integrating a lot of different apps and giving learners opportunities to either write something or write it in a computer and present it as a computer. There's a lot of attempts to kind of use different tools. But what is unique about the Common Ground Scholar project is that it has tried in one of these spaces that we've called Creator, where anyone who's in this space creates, makes knowledge, to provide a toolbar that allows them in the same space to use alphabetical literacy, to put in a source from some other place, to put in their videos, to put in their audios. It's a dynamic place where you don't have to have different apps to do it. It's designed, the creative space is designed for multimodality at its core. And this is a different way of operating than wanting to bring in different tools in order to make an artifact. So that's the point we want to make about the capacity of the CG Scholars Program around this point. Oh, one more thing I'd like to say is, of course, that it can be shared with the class, it can be shared with others, the artifact that you make, the multimodal artifact, it can be archived, it can be open to parents, other experts. The portability is also an important feature of this particular space and the artifacts that it allows learners to produce.